Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim. Today's episode 244, and we're going to be interviewing Greg. What's going on, Greg? How are we doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks.
So let's get started here. Ask everybody the same question. Let's get into how your childhood was. Tell me about growing up.
Uh, well, I moved around a lot. My parents split up when I was about 5 or 6. I have a sister, half sister, my mom, that's about 9 years younger than me, lived all over the country, but found myself in Utah, Salt Lake City in high
Why
school.
would why did you and the family move so much?
I think my mom was always searching for something new in her life or, running at times and, you know, yeah, looking for a change.
Do you know what kind of stuff she was running from?
She had a lot of, I don't know, difficult relationships. Like the father of my sister was a challenge. So at one point we lived in Utah when I was in elementary school, and we moved to Virginia and Seattle and back. We moved to Seattle, moved to Utah, moved to Virginia, and then came back. So she just was unsure of what it is she wanted in life, I think. But she worked hard. She was gone a lot, so I was home alone a lot. And then my sister was much younger, so I kind of felt like an only child, even though I did have a younger sister there.
How'd you do in school growing up?
Pretty good up until about high school. In high school, I started smoking pot, and everything went out the window. I was decent in school, enjoyed it, but once I started smoking pot, it all took a back seat. I used to play sports and just be involved in a lot of different things, and once I got to that point, I stopped caring about those things.
Who'd you smoke pot with for the first time?
I was a neighbor. I lived in Virginia, and we used to steal cigarette butts from his mom and smoke it in a pipe. And then he had a friend that had moved away and come back, and he brought some. So we stayed up late and snuck out and smoked pot. And man, I just fell in love with it immediately.
Why was that?
I guess I just like the way it feels. I don't think I was trying to escape from anything, at least at the time. I guess, being the new kid a lot, I was always looking for ways to fit in, having to make friends all the time. So that was like an easy way to a crowd that I identified with. Yeah.
So kind of searching to fit in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I mean, really, I just liked it, like I really don't remember feeling like depressed or unhappy as a kid. Except for being the new kid, that wasn't always fun, but really I just liked it a lot. Give me something to do with kids my age.
What kind of challenges did you face being the new kid all the time?
Well, just having to, yeah, just trying to make new friends all the time in a new place. That was tricky. Sports were good when I was younger. It was easier to make friends through sports. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I've gotten better at it in time. I'm not nearly as awkward around new people as I once was.
Why is it that you think you're awkward around people?
I don't know. I think just kids are, man. I don't know that I was especially awkward, but just being the new kid a lot was difficult.
Yeah, our perception of what people think about us is completely different from what they actually think about us usually.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So did you have, I mean, as far as friends and stuff, when you did get to new towns, I mean, you said you were easily, well, not easy, but you made them through sports and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Did you
but
bond with any over anything else, like drugs or alcohol?
yeah, drugs, smoking pot, and later drinking and party drugs and stuff was an easy way to fit in with people for sure.
So did you graduate high school?
Yeah, I graduated. I went to traditional high school for 9th and 10th, and then really wasn't going to school, wasn't getting good grades, failing most of my classes, and then I ended up in alternative school where I only had to go a couple hours a day, and then was able to finish all my credits and ended up graduating a little early. You know, uh, yeah, I graduated high school and I worked all through high school. I worked at a pizza restaurant from 14 to 18. Uh, Made a lot of money, or not a lot of money, more money than most of my friends, but I really just spent it on pot and other drugs. Always been a hard worker though. It's one thing that I've done well, I think.
What kind of other drugs did you use?
In high school,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
besides pot, what did you get introduced to?
I took acid and mushrooms, other, ecstasy, those kinds of things, and drank. There was a phase I went through where I was doing Ritalin. Um, that maybe lasted like 6 months or so. You
Let's
know,
talk about one at a time. How did you feel about LSD when you took it?
I thought it was pretty cool. The only reason I did it is because the guy that I bought weed off of didn't have any, and so it was dirt cheap. And a friend of mine decided to try it, and it took like an hour and a half of feeling nervous and waiting for it to happen. And then, man, it was like I just never had felt like that before. I thought it was pretty awesome.
Little mind expanding drug.
Yeah, yeah, right. I never had a bad trip or anything, but it wasn't something I did a lot of. I mean, maybe a couple dozen times. Not, not way as I would do other drugs later in life.
So what are the drugs you said? Also shrooms?
Yeah, in high school, those kinds of drugs, mushrooms, acid, ecstasy. Yeah, it
How'd you like ecstasy?
was cool, but it didn't grab me the way that smoking weed did, and later alcohol. Um, you know, yeah, I don't know. It's been quite a while since I've done any of those kind of drugs.
Why do you think it was that you're so strongly drawn to alcohol and weed?
Um, yeah, it's a good question, man. I think with alcohol, it was an easy way to socialize with people at parties and stuff at first, Um, I like to party and just go from one thing to the next and didn't have to, put much thought into life when you're just drinking all the time.
So what'd you do once you graduated high school?
Um, I that's when I started drinking heavily. I mean, I was, blackout drinker 6 nights a week. I worked in restaurants, wouldn't work until 4 o'clock to midnight, that kind of thing, and start drinking and stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning, blacked out, and then sleep all day and go back to work and do it all over again. So there was like between 18 and 24, like I was drunk all the time. I didn't really do much other than go to work and drink.
Were you drinking with people or are you drinking alone?
No, I was drinking with people, like parties and bars once I turned 21. I mean, I would always have alcohol to drink, on me. Like I'd get off of work, hit the liquor store, be drinking it on the way to the party, at in the party at the bar. I always had a bottle with me. But yeah, I know I wouldn't say I was a social drinker because that makes it sound like I'm only drinking when I'm, socializing, but I was drinking all the time, but always finding other people to drink with. Didn't spend much time alone at all during those years.
So you said it's between the years of 18 to 24. What happened at 24 that changed?
Got a girl pregnant, who's now my 14-year-old son. Uh, so we were both working in the restaurant. We decided we wanted to move in together, and I was drinking heavily, and you know, not didn't really have much going for me. But I wanted to be better. Wanted to provide for this family that was coming. So we're living together, and I'm still drinking heavily. And then I go to the bar, and I come home late, and she's like 8 months pregnant or something, and I go in late at night. I put in a corn dog in the microwave, and instead of for 2 minutes or something, I put it in for 20 minutes or whatever, and I passed out on the couch. And I wake up to smoke billowing out of the microwave, and my 8 month pregnant soon to be wife freaking out, and that really scared me. And that was really the first time I'd ever like decided that maybe I have a problem. I should change something. So yeah, stop drinking like that. But I didn't stop, using any kind of substances. I didn't look into recovery or anything. I just looked to see, I just saw my life and said, I can't sustain this. I'm not going to be able to provide in any way or, you know, be a father if I'm drinking like this. So I switched over to pills, opiate pills at that point. So, yeah.
How were you like socially when you were drinking?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How were you socially when you were drinking?
I think I was the life of the party, man. I was having a great time, you know, just bouncing around from people to people, lots of different acquaintances. But then I would get too drunk and make a fool of myself and, you know, get kicked out of bars and parties and beat up a couple times. Um, yeah, I wasn't like an angry drunk and I wasn't necessarily an emotional one either, but I was a really unpredictable one. You know, you didn't know what was going to come out of me. And I was a skateboarder at the time, and I used to skate late at night drunk and fall and wake up and not really know what happened and lose my skateboard and have a big, you know, bruise on my head.
So you said at 24 you changed over to pills.
Yeah.
Who introduced you to the pills?
I couldn't remember that. I don't know. They were just kind of around in my life at that point, but you know, I went deeper into the pills. Once I dropped alcohol, like it was as if I needed, you know, something to replace it. And so I went hard on the pills for the next few years.
What kind of pills mostly?
Like it was Oxycontin back then when it was pretty abundant, but opiate pills. Yeah, methadone, Oxycontin, Percocet, kind of stuff.
So methadone gets you high?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, plenty. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wasn't taking a lot. Well, there was times when I'd take a lot, but even like there's a time when I was taking like 10 milligrams and I guess sustainable, but if I took 20 or 30 milligrams, then you could get high, you know? So yeah, I did that, sure.
So what kind of pain pills? You said it's mostly Oxycontin?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of Oxycontin. They were cheap and available back then, and snort them and smoke them. Yeah, sell them. You know, there's a time when I was getting them like a bunch, you know, buying off of somebody for cheap, being able to sell them, and I should have been making money, but instead I was still losing money because I was using so many for myself.
How did you use it? You said you snorted and smoked it?
Yeah, and ate
Never
them.
shot it?
No, no, in all my drug use, I never was a IV user. Not to say that I wouldn't have. Maybe at some point, everybody around me was, you know, near the end was needle users, but I saw a couple people go down way harder. That, you know, they were smoking or snorting the different drugs, and they started shooting them, and they changed for the worse. And so that scared me. I wasn't necessarily scared of needles. I was more scared of how bad I could get. So thankfully, I never tried it, because I think if I would have tried it, I would have stuck with it for a long time. You know, it would have been a lot harder to get off.
How long were you on the opiates?
I mean, at that time, from age 24 to 29, I'd say, and then I, you know, I did heroin from the age of like 32 to 35. You know.
What made you switch over to heroin?
Well, I'll tell you what happened at 29. Well, there's a lot of different things that came up, but at 29, I got diagnosed with cancer. I had 4 surgeries in a short amount of time, and I actually was clean and in recovery when that diagnosis happened, and through 3 of those surgeries. And so I was able to stay clean through 3 surgeries and the diagnosis. But then in January of 2015, I had a doctor say that the only solution would be to get an amputation cut above my hip and through the pelvis. So I had chondrosarcoma, which is cartilage cancer. So they were going to cut my leg off to save my life, you know, and to cut the cancer away. And that's when I relapsed. I didn't end up having the amputation. I can tell you about that whole thing, but
You said you did have it?
I did not. I had an internal amputation with a reconstruction. It's called a internal hemipelvectomy. So they cut away a very large chunk of my body and replaced it with our chrome and different heavy duty plastics. Yeah, so what I was saying is that when I was told that I had to get the amputation, that's when I went hard on heroin. That's when I started doing heroin for the first time.
Where'd you find it? Who do you get stuff like that from?
Just went downtown. It was at the time, it still is like that, but downtown Salt Lake City, you just show up and find somebody selling it on the corner. So that was convenient. Made it easier than buying pills for sure. That was tricky at the time because the Oxycontin and those other things became less available with the change in the way the doctors were prescribing it and laws and those kinds of things. So heroin was an easier fix.
How long were you on heroin for?
On and off 2 years maybe. Yeah, I had some, short stints of sobriety and clean time, but yeah, about 2 years, I'd say.
And what'd you do after you were done using heroin? Was there anything after that, or did you get sober?
Well, I had a meth stint, and actually, really, when I was using heroin after that surgery, I was using meth too. So I used those together. First, it started with there was a time when I just used meth, and I had some clean time after that, and then I went to heroin, and then ended up doing them together. So really, people say, "What's your drug of choice?" It was meth and heroin together.
And you mean crystal meth, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. So, and even like now I got 4 years clean. When I have like triggers or I feel, and in the past when I have relapse, it's meth is the one that calls to me the most. I end up doing heroin to like settle myself down because, stay up for a few days and start losing touch with reality and I need to sleep. And so, at the time that seems like the way to go is to do heroin. And then I become addicted to that, so that I've had that cycle happen a couple times where I'm called to feel like, or I get triggered and I use meth and then it turns into both before you know it.
So what'd you do to get sober?
Well, this last time in May of 2016, I went to a treatment center called First Step House here in Utah. Went to detox and went to treatment. I'd been living on the street for the last year or so. Wasn't allowed to see my kids. Had all the, family in my life that had to, give up on me. Really, not give up on me is the right word, but they had to keep me at a distance, and I was just living a homeless drug addict lifestyle. And my kid's mom offered some help to get me into treatment, and I went to treatment.
How was treatment for you?
At first I got there and I was like, well, I'd already done a little recovery, so I kind of had this know-it-all thing going on where I felt like I already knew what needed to be done, but really I didn't. Like I was more lost than I'd ever been in life. But I first got there and I was like, I'm only staying 30 days and I'm gonna still smoke pot if I want, and I'll drink if I want to, and people in the treatment center at first were like, that's not how it works, but whatever, it's your life. And I was like set on that. But after about 2 weeks, I realized like how far my life had gone bad, how downhill my life had gone. And I realized that 30 days in treatment wasn't going to be enough. So I really just took all the suggestions like that were given to me in treatment and 12-step meetings and just absorbed it all to the point where like, I went in there like a homeless addict and was rough, and I talked and walked differently and just had a whole nother side of myself that you don't see today. But after like a couple months, I remember being like applauded by other clients in the program as the model client, and one of those things you hear it said in recovery, people were able to see in me what I couldn't see in myself. And others were able to see it, and that gave me a lot of confidence to say that if they think I'm doing well, then maybe I am, and I just continued in what it was I was doing, and yeah, it worked for me, worked for me.
So what'd you do once you got out of rehab?
Um, I ended up moving back in with my wife and kids. We had been apart for a couple years at that point, and she wasn't talking to me. She wasn't letting me see the kids. And really, I wasn't even trying to be with her or be with the kids because of, I was just so focused on the drugs that I wanted to use. And I was pretty angry with the world. Like I had gotten cancer and I was having trouble walking and I was in a lot of pain. And I had this feeling like, the world had done me wrong. And but then going to treatment, it really, everything changed and getting clean. And so during that time, my wife and I at the time, we were able to rekindle the relationship, and I moved back into the house with them after 4 months of living and working treatment. So yeah, and then I did a lot of service work in the beginning. I was chairing meetings for Cocaine Anonymous. I did some volunteer work. Needle exchange had just become legal in Utah, so there's a couple different organizations I was helping with needle exchange, and that was a big part of my recovery in the beginning, was to help others and to stay outside of myself. Like I was 9 months clean or something, and I was out in the streets of where I was just been homeless and using, and now I was like on this other side of the table handing out clean syringes, and that gave me a lot of purpose, and I felt I don't know, a real calling to help others that were dealing with the same situations that I had.
So how's life been treating you nowadays?
It's good. So I mean, it's great. The volunteering that I had done turned into a job. Somebody asked me one day, like, "Hey, did you ever think about working in treatment?" And at that point, I hadn't. And so I had this problem with my leg, with the cancer, and I was unable to work for a long time. But I had worked in jobs I didn't like, and so thankfully, I got onto disability because of I still have trouble walking sometimes and deal with a certain amount of pain, but I found a good balance. But so I was on disability, so I didn't have to worry. I mean, it gives me a little bit of income, but I can still work part time and take in the disability. So I found a job working part time in a treatment center, and that was 5 years ago, and I'm still there now. So I work in residential treatment center. I kind of do a lot of my things, sort of sports and activities. We go to the mountains. I coached a sober softball team last year. Yeah. So I worked there 5 years, but I only got 4 years clean right now. I actually had a relapse while I was working there. It was only 2 weeks, thankfully, but I stopped calling, stopped going to work, just disappeared. And, thankfully, it was only 2 weeks. I got back on track. I was able to get the relationships back on track in my life. And then about 9 months later, I was rehired and been there since. So that was a little over 4 years ago.
It's great, man. It sounds like you've had quite the journey.
Yeah, it's been a lot of ups and downs, but man, my life now is great. So yeah, I do at least 2 NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous meetings a week, Wednesday and Friday night. This season we just had the last sober bowling, but there's a sober bowling league right up the street from my house. Last week was the last week, so I've been involved in that. And then there's sober softball coming up, which I'm involved in that. And then I live with my 14-year-old son lives with me. And then I have a 12-year-old daughter that I take her to school most mornings. And then I see her on Friday and Sunday. And like those relationships are really good and really important to me. I got a girlfriend in recovery. She's got 2 years clean, and we go to NA meetings and different activities together. I just helped a friend of mine that was trying to get clean, and there was a lot of complicated moving parts to that, but I was able to help him through all that, and he's now 2 weeks clean himself and doing really well, and just in a place where I can help people and enjoy my life. No, things are really good right now.
It's great, man. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Recovery could be a great thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got one last question for you.
All right.
Do you have any advice for people watching and listening?
Find a community, really. I mean, that's what's been most helpful for me. Like I said, I got 4 years clean now, but at 3 years clean, I went through separation with my kid's mom, depressed and isolated, and I came close to relapsing again. And instead, I ended up going to a meeting and just doing the next right thing, as they say. And what's the difference between what my life was like then and was now is that I have a community of people that I can call on or just be a part of. So being a part of a community that's healthy and clean and trying to better themselves is really the best advice I can give is find a group that you identify with and lean into that.
All right, my friend. I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast and doing this today. How do you feel? You feel good?
Yeah, man, feel good. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. So do me a
All right.
favor, hang tight. And
Good.
for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on all social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. You name any other platforms, we're most likely on it. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of free resources as well as free literature. And also, Addicts Anonymous has a book coming out, hopefully by the end of the month, if not early next month. It's called Addicts Anonymous, Our Stories. So I'll keep you posted as far as the release date on that. So that's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.